Hey there, it's Maud Garrett, and welcome to an exciting new episode of RT Essentials. Now, before we begin, I have an important question for you. Do you like scary movies? Do you like bad impersonations? What about rule-breaking slashers that reshaped the horror landscape? This is an easy question because you don't like them. You love them. And today is your lucky day because we are discussing the film that awakened a sleeping genre and spawned a franchise that includes 4 feature-length installments, a TV series, and an upcoming relaunch set for release on January 14. That's right, this is the history of Scream. You instantly pictured the Ghostface mask, didn't you? I know, same. Maybe you thought of the iconic opening sequence in the first film where Drew Barrymore finds herself on the receiving end of a deadly prank call. Aspiring filmmakers take note, as this scene not only sets the tone for the entire franchise, but serves as a suspense-building masterclass. Before we dig in though, beware, there will be spoilers, so if you haven't seen the films, then we should have a slumber party! Scream.
Jamie, look behind you. Look behind you. Turn around. Behind you. Oh, turn. Behind you. Behind you.
Scream was released on December 20th, 1996, at a time when the slasher genre was riddled with direct-to-video features and lackluster sequels. I mean, John Carpenter's Halloween was already on its 5th installment, and Nightmare on Elm Street was on its 6th, so needless to say, it was time to shake things up. And here's where screenwriter Kevin Williamson enters frame. You've probably heard of his creations, Dawson's Creek, The Vampire Diaries, and The Following, but prior to Scream, Williamson was just a fledgling writer in need of a compelling story and a stroke of luck. The turning point would occur on March 9th, 1994, when a news magazine called Turning Point aired an episode on serial killer Danny Rolling. Rolling had viciously murdered 5 college students in Gainesville, Florida back in 1990 and was now facing the death penalty. Williamson, deeply inspired by this episode, birthed a script entitled Scary Movie. The plot follows a young group of students, well-versed in classic horror films, whose small town is shaken up by a sudden string of murders at the hands of a masked assailant, aka Ghostface. Though Williamson took inspiration from Rolling's murders, it's important to note how unique his overall concept was. By having his characters openly discuss and play out horror film tropes, he avoided being cliché himself and created a meta, genre-bending statement unlike anything that had been seen before.
Lose the outfit. If Sydney sees it, she'll flip. Oh, you want to play psycho killer? Can I be the helpless victim? Okay, let's see. No, please don't kill me, Mr. Ghostface. I want to be in the sequel.
In June of 1995, Scary Movie went on sale and immediately sparked a bidding war between Universal Pictures, Paramount Pictures, Morgan Creek Productions, and several other giants. As the price of the script increased, studios began to drop out, and the bid was now between notorious director Oliver Stone, working under Synergy Pictures, and Dimension Films, who at the time was part of Miramax. I can't even imagine what Scream might have looked like with Stone directing. But I guess we'll never know, because Williamson trusted that Dimension would stay true to the script and not censor the more violent aspects. So he agreed to their offer of $400,000 and a guarantee of 2 sequels. Now, for an unknown writer, this deal was a magnitude that was unheard of, which is a testament to Williamson's craft and the foreseen potential of Scary Movie. Next order of business, find a director. But not just any director, someone terrifying, a master of horror and suspense, someone who could hatch a villain that forever haunts the masses. The obvious choice, of course, Rob Reiner. I am kidding. He's a great director though. Clearly, Wes Craven was the right man for the job. I mean, the guy created Freddy Krueger. What more do you need to know? So just like that, Craven signed on. The movie got made and it was all smooth sailing, of course, off into the sunset. Roll end credits. Not quite. Craven had no interest in Scary Movie, as he was actively trying to distance himself from the horror genre that he'd become synonymous with. In fact, he passed on this project several times, and directors Danny Boyle, George Romero, Sam Raimi, and Robert Rodriguez were all considered.
Jesus Christ, you don't know the rules?
Have an aneurysm, why don't you?
There are certain rules that one must abide by in order to successfully survive a horror movie. For instance, number 1. You can never have sex.
Williamson feared that these other directors would overemphasize the comedic elements and ultimately miss the mark, so he held out. Now, when Drew Barrymore read the script, she demanded a role in the film, which nobody protested since she was a rising star at the time. And as luck would have it, Craven's current project had fallen apart, so the director now had an opening in his schedule. With Barrymore attached and this sudden window of free time, Craven's producing partner, Marianne Maddalena, felt that Scary Movie was too good to pass up, so she nudged the director. And after much reconsideration, he finally accepted the job. Instead of taking the traditional horror film approach of casting no names in the leading roles, Scary Movie chose actors that were either well-established or up-and-coming. Barrymore was originally slated to play the lead role of Sidney Prescott, but had unexpected commitments arise, so she instead took the smaller role of Casey Becker, who's killed off at the very beginning of the film. This was a bold risk to take, but it ended up paying off by adding to the shock value of the movie. I mean, wow, if they're taking out Barrymore in the first 5 minutes, what else is going to happen? You get the idea.
Name the killer in Friday the 13th.
Jason! Jason! Jason!
I'm sorry. That's the wrong answer.
No, it's not! No, it's not! It was Jason!
Afraid not? No way.
Listen, it was Jason! I saw that movie 20 goddamn times!
Then you should know Jason's mother, Mrs. Voorhees, was the original killer. Jason didn't show up until the sequel. I'm afraid that was a wrong answer.
You tricked me. The rest of the cast was soon assembled, with Courtney Cox, Rose McGowan, Skeet Ulrich, David Arquette, Matthew Lillard, and Jamie Kennedy all on board. And let's not forget the voice of Ghostface, portrayed by Roger L. Jackson, a crucial element in the film's spooky style. With the ensemble cast locked in and a budget of $15 million, principal photography began in April of 1996 and lasted for just 8 weeks. Shooting took place in Sonoma County, California, after Craven almost got fired by Dimension for insisting that they shoot in America and not Vancouver. Can you believe after all that effort to finally get Craven, they almost fired him before shooting? Now, I'm sure you're probably wondering how Scary Movie came to be called Scream. It is pretty simple. As production was nearing the finish line, Dimension decided that the title, Scary Movie, failed to convey the more satirical elements of the film, and felt that Scream was just a better fit. Of course, Williamson and Craven both hated the change at first, but they eventually came around to it. Plus, it left the title open for the Wayans brothers film that directly parodies Scream. A movie making fun of a movie that makes fun of movies. Ugh, I love film.
Damn little
What'd you call me? Huh?
Not your friend.
And this pretty much brings us to the release. Give or take a few lawsuits, a fired DP, a mob of angry parents petitioning to stop production, 50 gallons of fake blood, and a tedious battle with the Motion Picture Association of America to drop the film from an NC-17 rating, aka box office suicide, to an R rating. Whew, you still with me? Neither am I. Great, because this journey was not done in vain. No. Scream became the highest grossing slasher film in history and overall earned over $173 million at the box office. The Los Angeles Times called it a bravura provocative send-up of horror pictures. Roger Ebert gave the film 3 out of 4 stars, and Newsweek wrote that it put some fun back into a very tired genre. In addition, Scream won Saturn Awards for Best Actress, Neve Campbell, Best Writing for Williamson, and Best Horror Film. The movie's legacy is also apparent in similar releases like I Know What You Did Last Summer, Urban Legend, and Cherry Falls, all of which hoped to piggyback off the commercial success of Scream. Scream 2.
Hello?
Hello, Sydney. Remember me?
What do you want?
I want you. It's showtime.
Then why don't you show your face, you f***ing coward?
My pleasure.
On December 12th, 1997, less than a year later, Scream 2 was released in the US. Hollywood's new favourite final girl, Sidney Prescott, was back, as was Ghostface and the rest of the cast, minus Ulrich and Lillard, seeing as though they met their demise in the first film after sharing Ghostface duties. Oh, and McGowan's character, Tatum Riley, didn't make the cut either, despite begging Mr. Ghostface not to kill her so that she could be in the sequel. Oh, damn you, Ghostface. Subsequently, new villains were in order. So Timothy Oliphant was cast as antagonist Mickey Altieri, and Laurie Metcalf was cast as Mrs. Loomis, the mother of Ulrich's character, Billy, who was now seeking revenge for the murder of her son. Newsflash, Mrs. Loomis, your son Billy was a diet Johnny Depp psychotic killer. Who are you kidding? We can't argue with unconditional love. Or how much Urich wanted to be Johnny Depp in that film. Look at him. Actually, it's partially why he was cast. A little nod to Depp's role in Nightmare on Elm Street. Going back to the conception of Scream 2, we know that Williamson had already signed on for sequels with Dimension, and that Craven would be the obvious choice to direct again. If there'd been any doubts about proceeding with these follow-up films, the box office success of Scream 1 put those doubts to rest. Production was greenlit in March of 1997 with a budget of $24 million, $9 million more than the first film. So let's recap. We got the cast, we got Williamson, we got Craven, we got the budget, we all love the title now, producers are happy. What could possibly go wrong? Better question, what would a Scream production be without a splash of drama? Or in this case, instead of a splash, it's a leak. The kind of leak that plumbers lose sleep over. The one leak to rule them all. The big reveal. Yup, Williamson's script was leaked during a transfer. Right there on the internet for all to see was the plot, the dialogue, and worst of all, the identities of the new killers. Who wants to watch a murder mystery without the mystery? So it was back to the drawing board for Williamson, who rewrote the plot, changed the film's finale, and additionally reshaped several of the characters' roles.
See, that's what Billy was good at. He knew. It's all about execution.
Yeah. Well, you're forgetting one thing about Billy Loomis.
What's that?
I killed him. Piece of
To prevent this from happening again, many of the actors themselves were kept in the dark about the new big reveal, and information was given out on a strictly need-to-know basis. In light of this mishap, the swift production turnaround, and competitive blockbusters like Titanic being released around the same time, it was a miracle that Scream 2 wasn't a box office disaster. Actually, it set the December opening weekend record and went on to gross $172.4 million worldwide, just shy of the gross for Scream 1. And unlike most sequels, this one received generally positive reviews, with many believing that it exceeded the high bar set by its predecessor. Scream 3.
If you find yourself dealing with an unexpected backstory and a preponderance of exposition, then the sequel rules do not apply, because you are not dealing with a sequel. You are dealing with the concluding chapter of a trilogy. That's right. It's a rarity in the horror field, but it does exist.
Following the success of Scream, Williamson was now a major player in Hollywood. He had already written and released the first I Know What You Did Last Summer, created the hit TV series Dawson's Creek, developed another series called Wasteland, and was directing the film Teaching Mrs. Tingle, which he'd written prior to Scream 1. This meant that there was no time to fulfill his obligation of writing a third Scream installment, although he had written a treatment years before when he first pitched the films as a potential franchise. Dimension decided to replace Williamson with screenwriter Aaron Kruger. Yeah, that's his real last name. I love the horror space. Kruger was given Williamson's original treatment and notes, but mostly ignored them, in part for artistic reasons, but mainly because of the complicated environment surrounding violent films and media at the time. It was in 1999 that the horrific events at Columbine High School had occurred, so a slasher film that featured adolescent victims was just not what the public wanted to see. Plus, the first Scream films were already wrapped up in controversy after being blamed for several real-life copycat murders. To avoid negative attention, Kruger instead focused more on satire and significantly dialed back the brutality, though Craven fought to keep things slashy. For Scream 3, most of the cast returned yet again with some much welcomed additions like Parker Posey and Patrick Dempsey, aka McDreamy.
Interior Jennifer's house, living room night, the script page. Oh, what's it say? The bodyguard stabbed to death. The five stand trapped.
He's rewriting the movie.
As the killer waits outside, suddenly the fax machine sends news to their face.
It's a trap! Everybody outside!
The film was set in Hollywood, where Stab 3 is being shot. Now, Stab 3 is a film that's based on the Ghostface murders in the first and second Screams. In Scream 3, cast members of Stab 3 and the survivors from the first films are targeted, and once again, a killing spree ensues. Confusing, I know. Let's clarify. Stab 3 is a fictional film within a real film about murders that take place in a film that's based on real murders but uses horror film tropes, and the cast members in Stab 3 are getting murdered in the film but also in real life. Haha, I somehow made it worse. My bad. Scream 3 was released on February 4th, 2000 and went on to gross $161.8 million on a budget of $40 million. Though it was still considered a commercial success, it underperformed to the previous two films, but that can partially be chalked up to the public's attitude towards violent movies at the time. Critics weren't as accepting of this third installment, with Roger Ebert calling the characters so thin they're transparent. That's such a good burn. What do you expect though? It's the third movie in a slasher franchise. Films in that category aren't going to be winning the Oscar for Best Picture anytime soon. Scream 4. About a decade later, the band got back together for Scream 4. Craven directing and Williamson writing the way it was meant to be. The franchise was originally supposed to end after 3 films, but the creators felt that there was just more story to be told, and fans couldn't get enough of Ghostface. Also, the Scream brand had proven to be a cash cow, which probably factored into this decision. Just a little bit. Hollywood. It's called show business for a reason, people. Campbell, Cox and Arquette returned, slightly older and wiser, with new additions Emma Roberts, Alison Brie, Hayden Panettiere, Anthony Anderson, Rory Culkin and Adam Brody. The film starts off at the 15th anniversary of the Woodsboro Massacre that took place in Scream 1. And guess what? There's a new Ghostface in town and he's killing high school students again. Oh, classic Ghostface. Sometimes you just have an itch you can't stab. Or can, and do. Sydney Prescott returns to Woodsboro to promote her self-help book, as any final girl would do if they managed to make it to film 4. Sheriff Dewey has his hands full, and his reporter wife, Gail Weathers, is obviously going to entangle herself in this new wave of murders.
Dale! Dale, behind you!
Still paranoid after the Scream 2 leak, the actors in this film, the real-life actors I mean, were only given the first 75 pages of the 140-page script, which meant that even they didn't know the true identity of Ghostface until when he killed them. In the film, not in real life, just to clarify. Whew. With a budget of $40 million, the same as Scream 3, shooting began in June of 2010 and lasted just over 2 months. This was also the first film in the series to rely on computer-generated imagery, switching out the old collapsing knife trick for a shiny new CGI blade. Scream 4 was released on April 15, 2011 and grossed $97.2 million. The lowest numbers for a Scream film, but still a success. Overall, critics agreed that the film was a step up from the previous installment, with The Guardian calling it fun but more clever than fiendishly ingenious. Sadly, Wes Craven passed away in August of 2015. This was the last film of his prolific career, which spanned over 4 decades and left an indelible mark on our culture. A true master of horror. Scream, the TV series.
I don't forgive so easily.
What did you do to him?
It's what you're gonna do that's the real I suggest you run.
Dimension Television and MTV Production Development teamed up to produce Scream, the TV series, which originally aired on MTV June 30th, 2015. The show was first developed by Jill Bloetvogel and followed a string of murders that had taken place in the fictional town of Lakewood. It starred Willa Fitzgerald, John Connor, Bex Taylor-Louse, and many others. This is probably a good time to discuss the complicated history of the Ghostface mask, as it was a source of contention in the making of the series. The Ghostface mask that we've all grown to love and fear was actually created by a New York-based company called Funworld back in 1991. Craven and Marianne Maddalena happened to stumble upon the mask while location scouting for the first Scream, and they felt it was the perfect costume for their slasher film. And when it comes to creating a villain, you just don't question Craven.
Tyler!
Since Funworld owned the design, Craven and his effects team made various attempts to copy the mask just enough to emulate the expression without getting sued. After several sketches and molds, it was decided that nothing was suitable, so Craven convinced the studio to license the Funworld mask for use in Scream. Fun fact, because shooting had already commenced, there were a couple of scenes where the mask is one of the alternate molds, and not the Fun World version. But aside from that, Ghostface's face stayed true for the rest of the franchise. That is, until the TV series decided to switch things up by giving Ghostface a new face shape and expression. This left audiences feeling betrayed, and Craven himself responded by saying, "Sometimes you realize something's not broken, so don't fix it." That was the course we took on all the Scream films. Don't mess with that. It's just perfect. The show ran for 3 seasons, 30 episodes, and received mixed reviews, though season 2 was considered a standout, earning a tomato meter score of 92%. Scream 2022.
Doors unlocked. All doors locked. Doors unlocked.
And just like that, we have made it to 2022, where a new Scream is set for release. This 5th installment is written by James Vanderbilt and Guy Busick and directed by Matt Bettinelli, Olpin, and Tyler Gillett, who all worked on 2019's Ready or Not, which is a fantastic comedy horror. So the franchise is in good hands, especially with Williamson serving as executive producer. Scream, informally known as Scream 5, stars our OG faves, Campbell, Arquette, Cox, Marley Shelton, and Roger L. Jackson, aka Ghost Voice, and brings on newcomers like Melissa Barrera, Jenna Ortega, Mason Gooding, and Jack Quaid.
Hello?
It's happening. 3 attacks so far. Do you have a gun?
I'm Sydney Prescott. Of course I have a gun.
Something about this one just feels different.
Here's what we know so far. 25 years have passed since the original Woodsboro murders. A new killer is going to emerge. He better be sporting the original Ghostface mask design. And Sydney Prescott will return to her hometown, get wrapped up in the new murders, and have to dig up her haunted past. Hey Sydney, you should probably stop going back to Woodsboro. Actually don't, because we want more movies. Scream 5 will hit theaters on January 14th and is the first Scream film to not be directed by Craven. One thing is for sure though, it will be a slasher's delight that we can only hope would have made the late director proud. And there you have it, the long-winded, frightfully frantic history of Scream. Appreciate you joining us here on this ride, and be sure to check out the newest Scream hitting theaters soon. Heck, go back and watch them all in preparation and rank them on social media. I'm Maud Garrett, appreciate you tuning in. More RT Essentials are on the way, and remember, there are certain rules that one must abide by in order to successfully survive a horror movie.